is our obligation to inform and alert the American people, to make certain that they possess all the facts that they need and understand them as well, the perils, the prospects, the purposes of our program, and the choices that we face.
Hey, good morning, everybody from California. I am Matt Kennedy, and you are tuning in to another episode of Ultra MK Podcast, where together we are reversing the narrative. And this morning, I am very blessed to be joined with a good friend of mine who I recently got even more acquainted with at the Rev 17 conference that we had put on here in Northern California. I had met him one other time before in North Carolina at a Clay Clark Reawaken America tour event, and that was a delightful time to talk with Chris. But I have today joining on the show Chris Burgard, who is a man that wears many hats, as you'll hopefully find out in this episode. He's definitely doing the Lord's work and the kingdom. He's been doing a lot of work recently down in Texas and helping from that disaster that just happened at Camp Mystic. And but Chris is a very dynamic man, and getting to know him, we can't get everything out in probably one episode, but I'm definitely going to be bringing Chris back on future episodes so we can explore more about his life's journey. But I was really wanted to get Chris on today because so much has happened in the last 2.5, 3 weeks, especially since 4th of July. And I feel that he has a lot of good information to share with folks, and especially as people are still in need in Texas, there could be some opportunity for generous people who wanted to maybe send out a donation or something to people who could really use the help. And so, Chris, thanks for joining me today.
You betcha. It's man, our arc has really it's really exploded, man. You know, you and I met in North Carolina. We had just gotten back there. Our His Glory Quick Response Team had been working there with people on the ground, and we went to do the event, the Clay Clark. Met y'all there, and I met you and Pastor Dave and Cheryl. And Pastor Dave's got this great Western shirt. I'm thinking, man, Johnny Cash would be proud to own that shirt. And y'all are like, yeah, we're going to buy a women's prison for $17.3 million, and we're going to, help, traffic children. I'm like, that's a wonderful dream. Where are you going to get $17.3 million? And here we are. And the deal you all did and making that actually happen, the Rev 17 event, where you got the rest of the money to negotiate the price down, and then got that price. That was just God's work. That was
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, man, hanging out with Pastor Dave Bryan, it's an adventure all the time, and he's just God's has been giving him downloads for 40 plus years, and um, I haven't known him all that long. I actually really connected with him at a Mar-a-Lago event when I helped a good friend of both of ours run for U.S. Senate in California. But ever since then, man, we've been attached at the hip, and actually, speaking of Pastor Dave's, I mean, you run with another Pastor Dave as well,
I
Pastor
do.
Dave Scarlett.
Yep.
And I got a brief chance to meet him in California when y'all came out to support Rev 17. And I did text his I texted his secretary to let him know that I would love to talk to him more and get to know him on a one-on-one basis when I don't have a headset and running around like crazy at an event. And I hope that message got to him. But yeah, man, God's great, and in a world full of tons of darkness, there's still light that is shining, and it's a spiritual battle that we're all engaged in. He's choosing certain people to be involved in it on the front lines, like I believe we are. But we had been blessed with getting the funds to buy that facility near our church. It's called a Leo Chesney Center, and it came down from 17 down to 4 million, because even the property owners who had been held on to it, I mean, they knew that because of state politics that it really wasn't going to sell to anybody else but probably a nonprofit. But I think God touched on their hearts too and said, hey, what's the lowest you would go? What's the lowest you'll go? Because these kids need to be rescued. And sure enough, we were able to work as a team and with God to help make it happen. So Thank
Yeah.
thank you guys at His Glory for really looking out for us. And even prior to our Rev 17 event, I mean, anytime it seemed like I would reach out to the producers over there at His Glory, they would always be kind to want to hear our story or interview Pastor Dave and his wife, or even our candidate that was running for U.S. Senate. Everybody at His Glory, they're just amazing, godly patriots, and we love them.
But we're all on board with your mission, and we had a meeting last week. We want to work. We want to get more into helping y'all with the anti-child trafficking stuff. For me, that's personal. 20 years on and off the border tracking bad guys. And in the old days, when you catch them, it was usually drugs or guns they were humping. 3 years ago, it changed, and it was children. And the work you're doing is just so amazing. When I got there for your event, um, I knew God's hand was on it when, my buddy Lara's there, Joe Burkett's there, and this is somebody that I worked with years and years ago. And then I run into Boz down there, man. The last time I saw Boz was on our old ranch in California, like 23 years ago. And just that all these people that have been fighting the fight and the mission for God for the right reasons, all in one place. That was just a powerful, powerful weekend.
Yeah, it really was. It was like the all-stars that are in this category of that have been fighting this. And to be honest, when it's a mission that God wants fulfilled, He's going to make it happen, and people clear their schedules, especially with the importance of child rescue and the big need. And you would agree at this is the aftercare of children. It's like
Yep.
from what I understand with intelligence sources and people who have actually been, on the front lines of seeing this over the last, like you said, 20 to 30 years. It's not that uh, they don't have the capacity to go and rescue. It's, well, what do you do with children beyond that point? And
It's
what's the
important.
pro?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's important to note that in the old days, when you'd find children on the board and these groups coming over, we take them to these federal detention centers, these FLETC centers, and under anybody else but Trump, they weren't doing biometric DNA testing. So these kids, we thought they were being given and reunited with their families. They were just being given back to traffickers.
Mm,
Trump changed that when he put in the biometric DNA testing again. That's something Biden threw out, and then Trump put it back in when he got in. So, but then still the thing is, where do they go? Well, thanks to you guys, there's going to be a safe place. There's you. There's Pastor Troy Brewer down here in Texas. Um, I just can't emphasize enough the need and the God's how you're doing God's work. And I think eventually what we're going to see, what's going to come out, the children have been the currency for so much corruption and blackmail.
mhm.
As your audience knows, why do the cartels, why do they go into tens of billions of dollars a year industry with children? Because they can sell a kid over and over every night. Whereas if you're bringing over speed or fentanyl or coke, it's gone after 1 year.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's an ancient evil trade, the sex trafficking trade and of children. And it's morphed into this behemoth of evil currency. And it's from the top down, from
Oh man,
from different empires and people and royalty in the world, and then celebrities, and then pro athletes, from what we're learning, to even mid-level government agencies, corrupt law enforcement. It's just it has embedded itself so much into society, and they've tried to do a good job of hiding it all, but God is shining a light on this, and people are finding out, and it just seems like as people awaken, Chris, would you agree that we will see many amazing things happen to counter all of these years of evil sex trade?
absolutely, absolutely. Right now, it's information work. I mean, for most people, it's tough for them to grasp their heads around how evil this really is, or tough for them to understand you're dealing with a system where you want to own a politician, you want to own a sports star, you want to own a business leader, you know, slip something in their drink, then get video of them doing something to a little kid, you own that person.
Yeah,
That's really how things work in too many areas. So I
yeah,
think if people start to wrap their head around just how evil this is and why child trafficking, it's been embraced by so many bad guys. It's gonna do things. And it comes down to, Matt, when we get that information, do we act on it? Do we save the children? Do we follow the leads of people like you and Pastor Dave Ryan? Because if we can't protect our children, then we don't deserve God's blessing.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, once you know, you have to do something in some capacity. And for anybody who's watching this episode today, you can do amazing things. People, no matter where you're at, no matter what your socioeconomic status is, there are good people out there that are looking for others to join them. And it's even just, sharing some information with a colleague or a neighbor about things that could be happening in the community that you know people need to unite. And I think that it's going to happen. It's not as quick as we all want it to happen, but God's moving for sure. God's moving for sure. So yeah, Rev 17 was a great event, Chris. So let me just kind of take people back in time a little bit about how you got into kingdom work and what's led you up to this point today. You had mentioned that you had worked down on the border for some time, and getting to know you, you've also made some amazing documentaries, talking about some of the things that you've firsthand witnessed. I know you also have a relationship with Tom Homan, who has been overseeing all of the border operations. So can you just kind of share a little bit about like
Yeah.
what
Okay.
brought you
So,
here?
yeah, if you would, I'm 63 years old working for God through His Glory Ministries. If you ever told me that had been my career path, I would have said, you're smoking something. I grew up in Wisconsin on a small horse farm. My dad was a cop. Yeah, I came out to Hollywood. I was one of Ferris Bueller's dance doubles in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I was a ballet dancer coming out of college.
Come on, man. That's one of my favorite 80s movies, dude. No
Yeah,
wonder I love you so much.
that was a hoot to work on. And the choreographer said, who's now a big director, Kenny Ortega, he said, look, you can stay, in Chicago and make a living dancing and acting, or you can come out to LA and make a career out of it. So that's how I got to LA and, acted in TV series and movies. I was on Growing Pains for a season. That was a lot of fun, which is how I got to know Kirk Cameron. And here's me and Kirk 30 years freaking later. And here's me, God's really got a sense of humor. My old pastor in California was Rob McCoy at
Yeah.
Godspeed Calvary Church. Guess what church Kirk was going to? So we met after
Wow.
then, and back then it was 27 years, but it's like God's got a sense of humor. So um, I'd never made a documentary, and after having this Hollywood career, I had an opportunity. I was working with some guys on the ranch that were here illegally, and they were telling me this story about Mexico and how the cartels had overtaken their village, and how you couldn't let your wives, your daughters walk around because if they got raped, the police wouldn't help them. And so they came here and they told me how the cartels would put a gun to your head and say you're going to carry, drugs through the desert, or we're going to shoot you and leave you here. And it was a really wild experience. So my wife and I made this movie called Border, screened for Congress in 2007. It was used as a grassroots tool to stop Bush's immigration amnesty thing he was pushing through. And that's when I learned how the world really works. We thought we made a movie that brought people together because we discovered these things called rape treaties. We saw the horror that was going on with the cartels and how they were torturing people. And when we tested the movie, everybody got together and they could unite because it was good versus evil. But when that started coming out, the machine, the deep state came down and me and my wife, and all of a sudden they portrayed us as racist and this and that. And up until this film, I was never really comfortable talking about God. I grew up Catholic. We prayed. God was a big part of our lives, but I didn't share it publicly. But when we did the movie Border, we would pray. When my crew was down there, we were living together in a motorhome. We'd pray before every meal, and then things happened down there. There was just the hand of God. It's like, wait, how did that just happen? Wait, how are we still all coming back for dinner safe and sound? And that really strengthened my faith. And then after we made Border, I got blacklisted in Hollywood. People I knew for 20 years wouldn't return my phone calls. Came down to Texas, Dan Patrick and Ed Hendy. Dan Patrick's now the Lieutenant Governor of Texas. And Ed Hendy, just an amazing entrepreneur and radio host at the time, invited us down to do a screening of the movie, A Border, that we couldn't get arrested in Hollywood. came down, filled 3 theaters, had to come back 3 weeks later, fill 2 more. And when we finished the first screening, going into the Q&A, a woman stood up and said, "Mr. Burgard, do you mind if we just pray for you and your family?" Because at the time doing this movie, we were getting surveilled by the government. We were getting surveilled by cartels. They were coming out to a ranch. It wasn't fun. And all of a sudden, 730 people in the theater take off the cowboy hats, bend their heads, and they're praying for us. And I almost started crying on stage. The hairs up in the back of my neck, and I got off the phone, off the stage when we were done. I called my wife, said, "Honey, our friends may have turned our back on us in Hollywood, but here in Texas, I just had a whole theater of people praying for us." And that moment really, really changed how I looked at life and what my path was. Like, okay, God, I see what you're saying. And that was the beginning of our journey to live on faith. And so God took me from doing sitcoms and feature films to, next thing I know, I'm in Central America when they're trying to overthrow a government down there. And I start seeing all these patterns. Fast forward, I'm back on the border, and I'm on the border, and we're running into jihadis coming through West Texas, and the Sinaloa cartels partnered up with them, threatening to cut my friend's wife's head off if she doesn't shut up and take it back to Chihuahua. So we staged down there. All these things happening that maybe now they don't sound so crazy, but 20 years ago, people thought we were nuts. And then that got me working with a task force out of DOD that General Jerry Boykin put together, working against the Muslim Brotherhood that was infiltrating in the United States of America. And that led to the Obama administration, bringing unindicted co-conspirators from the Holy Land Foundation terror trial and putting them actually into the United States government. So just when I thought it couldn't get any wilder, there's a fellow named Herman Cain decides to run for president, and his campaign manager had seen Border and wanted me to meet Mr. Cain. So I came down and met him, and he decides to hire me to be his creative and strategic media advisor for his presidential campaign. And I'm like, "Mr. Cain, I've never done a political commercial in my life, and I don't like politicians, so I don't know why you want to hire me." And he goes, "And I've never run for president before. It's going to be perfect." And that was just an amazing experience, because at one point, before they got him, the deep state got him out of the race, he was 21 points ahead of Mitt Romney and doing it on a fraction of the budget. And we were able to put stuff out. I don't know if you remember, we had a thing called 999. It was our new tax plan. It was going to knock people's socks off. That was the first of 3 things we had coming out. Our border plan is pretty much what Homan's doing now, but we were years ahead of it. So
was this around the time of like the big Tea Party movement in America, or was this before that?
So yeah, it was just about as that was peaking a little after. And it's funny because the Tea Party movement, if you remember this, you may have still been in grade school when this happened, but back in 2004, 2005, there was a thing called the Minuteman movement, which is volunteers going to the border, being the eyes and ears of the Border Patrol. And man, these guys got attacked so bad, and it was being written into like Law and Order and all these big shows. And when that stuff's happening, when the propaganda machine gets activated, you got to pay attention, because that's how people behind the scenes have just fired a missile. Why? What are they afraid of? Where's this going? So the Minuteman movement evolved into the Tea Party movement. The Tea Party movement evolved into the MAGA movement. And the MAGA movement, as you saw on January 6th, and I think you've seen my films, I was there on January 6th with my family and my partner, Nick Searcy. And before Ashley was killed, before anything went down, I was having a come to Jesus moment with myself and my wife, because I was like, this is Honduras all over again. This is the same pattern. This is what they're doing. Why is there no media covering the 2 million people marching the Capitol? That tells me they're all pre-positioned, because the images and the message they want to put out isn't 2 million Christians and conservatives praying and singing Kumbaya, people of all colors. And just as I told my wife that, I was breaking that down for my buddy Nick calls me and goes, "I just watched the Capitol Police move the bicycle racks, and they're directing people into the Capitol building." And this is how God works, because that day, I wasn't planning on making a movie about January 6th. But as it turns out, we had to, because we were there, we saw what was happening, we knew it was going on. But then also, this is where God comes in. guys I'd worked with in the military. I wasn't military, I worked with the military. And guys I worked with that were in the intelligence services, three-letter guys, some of my best friends were all there that day, and we didn't know it. So we had coverage and eyes on from all these different things. So we were able to brief afterwards, put stuff together, and we're like, wow, this is really where it goes deep. And then we started looking at things. So we knew back in 2001 who the architects of January 6th were, how they did it, how Ukraine was, what they did in 1994 in Ukraine, sorry, in 2014 in Ukraine.
Yeah, the color revolutions.
Right, how that was a dress rehearsal for what we did here. Same players, same
Mhm.
strategies. And
In fact, I saw, I mean, that they actually imported some Ukraine operatives to blend
right,
into
and we ran into them on
J6.
January 6th. I mistakenly thought they were Russians. We later found out they were Ukrainians.
Hmm.
Uh, and their you know their footprint was all over. There's one guy, Sergei Debenin, who was a big player in the Color Revolution in 2014. He was there that day, and what are the chances? How does a guy like that, who should be a criminal, how does he get into the United States of America? What's he doing in Washington D.C.? What's he doing in Washington D.C. on January 6th? What's he doing on Washington D.C. January 6th, taking selfies with Jake Chansley, the Buffalo Horn dude, who was
Yeah,
already pre-scripted and pre-written within 24 hours to come out in the media as the leader of the QAnon,
sure. Shaman.
this
Yeah,
is when you know this is an intelligence operation.
yeah.
And so we did Capital Punishment. It was the most censored movie of 2022. I thought I was done with this. People kept saying, you need to make a sequel, you need to make a sequel. I'm like, I don't know. There's a lot of good people come out now telling the stories. And then the FBI came to my ranch in Texas, quarter mile of my
Mhm.
ranch. And if you know any Texans or been down here, you don't step on someone else's property, let alone go down the quarter mile into the ranch.
Yeah.
And so I found out I was being investigated as a terrorist threat
Hmm.
to the United States of America. And I said, okay, I'll meet with y'all. They wanted to talk to me, ask me questions. Remember, I've done 3 projects with Mike Flynn at this point, and you saw what they did to General Flynn. They
Oh,
caught
yeah.
him on a misstatement. They hit him with felony, 7 years federal prison. So, but I said, I want my attorneys there. I want to record everything, so nothing be taken out of context. And I'll talk. No problem. Me, this is personal. My dad was 100. He was law enforcement. Session of the FBI Academy in 1978. So, I'm thinking, okay, they just made a mistake. We'll clear this up, not a problem, but I just want to have the stuff to, cover our 6. And then these guys, they go around my attorneys and they try to get me to meet without my attorneys. They come down to the next county over, Titus County, like, oh, Chris, we're in the neighborhood. Just come on down, VPS, Criminal Investigation Division. We'll get the interview done. Don't worry, we'll record the whole thing. And I said, why didn't you call my attorneys? Well, we didn't want to bother them. This just take 5 to 10 minutes. And I said, you guys blew it. You Googled me. You know who I am. You know who my father was. You know what I do. I'm an Academy Awards, they hate us. I'm an award-winning documentarian that's done some kind of cool stuff. And you know my attorneys, and you know my attorneys well. And to go around their back, this isn't my first rodeo. I'm done. I'm not talking to you anymore.
Yeah.
So that went into a couple of months of stuff between my attorneys and the FBI. And that was the nudge I needed to make the sequel that I had been resistant to. When God talks to you, he whispers in your ear. And if you don't hear him, he taps you on the shoulder. Then if you're still not listening, he punches you in the stomach.
Yeah.
Well, the gut
Yeah.
punch for me was being investigated as a terrorist threat. And let me tell you, Matt, my girls, my wife, my daughter, they are troopers, but when they look at you and they're scared of their own government and you can't take that fear away, that's something no father should have to do in America. When your daughter looks at you, and because she was friends with a girl from some of the children in Capital Punishment. In the Capital Punishment, you saw them flashbanging 4 and 7-year-old kids. You saw them dragging 12-year-old girls out in the freezing cold, putting them in handcuffs, threatening to shoot their dogs. So when your daughter looks, she goes, Dad, should I put all the dogs in my room tonight? Do you think the FBI is coming next? I don't want them to shoot my dogs, Dad. I don't want them to shoot the dogs. That should not happen in the United States of America. So that is why I made The War and Truth with my partner Nick Searcy, and that's how I got into His Glory. Because in His Glory, Capital Punishment, the first one we did, financing fell apart, and Pastor Dave jumped in, and within 48 hours had the financing to make Capital Punishment. And when it came to making the War on Truth, he said, why don't you come work for us? And that way you can keep on mission and not worry about losing your ranch, protecting your family, doing all that. And when the founder of your ministry is a former Marine that's died and talked to God, and he's here with one mission to work for God, um, it's a pretty good thing. So here's God sending me out one more time. So that's just been awesome. And so His glory, it's an amazing ministry. It's an online ministry. You'll hear a scripture, Shabbat from Pastor Dave's great shows into prophetic voices, into people that are living God's word, praise music, and then you're going to see interviews and news programs that have generals and active 3-letter and retired 3-letter agents in there, and getting the real truth of what's going on. And then because we have several well-trained former military on our staff, and because of what God's had me do, in my experience, we were able to put together His Glory Quick Response Team. That we went to North Carolina and helped out there, and we just got back from the Guadalupe River here in Texas. It's just been an amazing journey. So yeah, from a ballet dancer guy that wore tights for a living to this. Well, I guess I forgot to tell you, somewhere in between the Hollywood days, I kind of did my career backwards. I went from starring in movies and doing stuff like that to directing, and then actually getting in the stunt world with horses, because I was a bull rider. And for a while, I
Wow.
did to Hollywood. I went back just to training horses for people, and so I got to do like Anna and the King, Pirates of the Caribbean, Scorpion King, Hidalgo, movies like that were a lot of fun. But then here I am years, and that's what got me to meet my wife, because she wouldn't marry an actor, but she liked cowboys, so that worked out pretty good. And
Yes, slid right in there.
being an old bull rider, that's why at Rev 17, I'm running into Troy Brewer. Never met him. He's an old bull rider. It's like, man, I felt like I was going back home, instead of hanging out in bars now that we're working in churches. So
Yeah.
Scott
It-
Mendez, former world champion bull rider, heck of a ministry Scott has. I mean, God's just got a plan, and it's in a sense of humor and adventure, and
yeah,
I
he
got to meet
does.
guys like you. So that,
That's
that that's all there is to say for me. Now, if you see here, that's one of my shepherds in the background. We've got a great team of shepherds here, so I feel safe leaving my wife and daughter home. Um, the ranch He's blessed us with in Texas, it's just too much. God has just blessed us in so many ways. Just kind of wake up every morning thinking every day's Christmas, and what can we do to make the world better, and listen to God and try to be obedient.
That's it. There's plenty of work to do, man. There's plenty of work. There's never a deficit of needs that need to be met, right? And yeah, your testimony is it's so interesting to me because it's so dynamic, and it's been I can tell that you've been obedient even in times where you didn't know maybe it was God, but you knew you had to do it and it was instinctual. Looking back, I can tell you're giving the glory where it's due. And
You put the tugging on your heart. Like, I had no idea I was going to make a movie about the border, but I just felt they had to be there, and that was
yeah.
the first time. And I've gotten to this on talk shows. People try to make, oh, you think you Christians, you think you can talk to God? I'm like, well, He talks to us. Well, you think you can hear God? Yes, it's called praying. If you try that, but on this journey, I mean, we went in the first early years from just these things happening that made His presence so known. So when I was in Honduras, I actually heard a voice. We're in the middle of a meeting and said, "Go out in the hall. Get in the hall." Fine. Get in the hall. Turn left. Turn left. And this guy comes out of a hotel room with this younger woman. Okay, great. Goes, go to the elevator. What? Go to the elevator. Get in the elevator. They come around the other direction. They get in the elevator with me. This guy turns out to be a high-ranking politician in Honduras. And I later found out, and he was so nice to me when I told him I was impressed what I was doing. He was like, "Oh, okay, great." Turns out the woman he was with was not his wife. And he
Oh
gave
no.
me phone numbers to people and some behind the scenes stuff that set us on this journey to be able to cover all this stuff and get the truth out about what was happening down there, and what the plan was, the communist plan to take over the country. And it was all because God started talking to my ear, go out, do this, do that stuff. And since then, um, that's living on faith. So since then, you try to be a little bit more receptive and have that microphone to God, and it's there for all of us.
Yeah,
Mm.
truly is. It
Like you
truly
said,
is.
Pastor Dave gets downloads from God all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so great that we're forming this family, in our country, and to fulfill some of these missions. And speaking of missions, I know that I mean it's so wild that I keep meeting you either before or after some kind of a catastrophic storm. That you and your people get involved with search and rescue, and so there's just things happening right
It's
now that are.
recovery. By the time we get there, we'd love to do rescue, but like that was the problem in Guadalupe. People like, you're gonna rescue people, and we're like, because you don't want to dash their hopes, but the folks who
Yeah,
died, they weren't breathing.
yeah. Yeah. So how is the progress going down there? What's needed down there? How can people pray for
Oh,
Guadalupe and or that region of Kerrville?
the recovery, there's still a lot of people missing. Last number I heard was 161. Then we recovered two remains, and then I know a bunch of other teams been recovering remains. Some of our team members, we work with Heroes for Humanity and Gulf Search and Rescue, and I know the military guys from Heroes for Humanity, they're still down there. This morning, they're diving on two vehicles they found submerged. Um, Windows are up, keys are in the ignition, so I'm anticipating they're going to probably have a couple more recoveries today, but the number was around 160. I'm afraid it's a lot higher. We'll probably never know. Like one of the campgrounds we worked, um, they did a good job getting people out in the middle of the night, but like one of the campers, my friend John Chase Taylor, he dove in a camper, was submerged. He pulled out a woman and her baby. Okay, so was she there camping, just her and her baby? Was there a husband? Were there other siblings? We don't know these things. We may never know. There's just so many instances like that. So what do people need down there? Um, right now, one of the can't like Campers for Christ, they're taking down fencing because the river just took all the fencing out. Cut out the moldy drywall, cut the debris, the trees. There are still tens, if not hundreds of thousands of snags along the river. Some have been bulldozed. They need to go back to with dogs to look for remains. Some, as the river changes, we had more floods for a couple of days. That's starting to go down. People are still working all those piles with sticks, you go around poking like this, trying to locate remains and dogs. But I got to tell you, it's tough. The beginning of the week when I was down there, we were finding, the teams were finding bodies, and by halfway through the week, the end of the week, we were just finding pieces of bodies, remains. And if we didn't have good cadaver dogs, you weren't going to find them.
Yeah.
And you're looking for big snags that have come up, and then you're using your nose. But most people smell decomp, until you find what you're looking for. Most people can't tell the difference between a dead deer, a dead goat, dead sheep, or a dead person. So a lot of tunneling. We spent 2 days tunneling in a big pile, and then we hooked up with some amazing heavy equipment operators down there that just picked it up piece by piece. And I have to tell you, a good thing happened. Last Thursday, I was pretty upset because FEMA was coming in and just ordering people to go home, just telling people to leave, because now they're coming in with paid people and the bigger agencies, and you have your QR code. You tell them how many hours you worked, your team worked, how much fuel you used, you get reimbursed, they get these contracts. And before that, it had just been volunteers that were down there doing it for the mission, like the Gulf Search and Rescue Team, the Heroes for Humanity. And there's people that raise money for their organizations, they come on their own dime. We ran into ranchers down there just maxing out their credit cards to go rent big excavation vehicles, excavators, bulldozers, skid steers, and paying for the repairs and the diesel out of their own pocket. These are the guys that were down there. So FEMA was coming in, they were telling everybody to go home, they were taking over. And we got pretty upset. We got real loud about it, and they softened, which is nice because now they're dovetailing. So the organizations that have been there, instead of just picking out, they're like, okay, what did you learn? What areas have you covered? Okay, now we can get in here with our teams and move, which is nice because that's a big difference from what happened in in Hurricane Helene in North Carolina. So people are still doing recovery down there. The outpouring of support and supplies. And when I was first down there, it was just debris, debris, debris. And at the end of the week when we were leaving, there was like boxes of water everywhere and dry socks and work gloves and stations where people would come down to give you IVs because you get so dehydrated working these piles. It's just it's just seeing God's love down there and God show up and people from all over the country to help coming to help Texans. It was just amazing. What do people need down there? Like I said, it's changing. Um, people have insurance, most people do, but where do you stay? Hotels get expensive, fees get expensive. You're not going to work. So like we're working with an organization, Campers for Christ. We work with them in North Carolina. They built tiny homes for people to stay in while they got back on their feet. We built their homes. This time, due to codes and building permits, Texas is a little different. So we're going to be buying campers to put these folks in. Right now, we're sending down fencing for the ranchers that they can try to, the livestock they've saved, they can try to put them somewhere. Um, there's just so much need there. It's all changing. So we're collecting money through His glory, but also you can go to like the Hunt County, the Hunt, Texas Fire Department, the Kerrville Fire Department, all these places. Get it straight to the folks that are on the ground that need it, instead of some of these other pop-up places.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I've even heard that the Clinton Foundation is still trying to take advantage of natural disasters and get people, who don't know any
I'll tell you
better.
100%, 7 days down on the ground there, I do not see one person or staff member from the Clinton Foundation going through
Hmm.
these files or helping people down there look for their loved ones, their sister-in-laws, their children, their parents. So
Yeah.
don't give a dime to those people.
Now, under the Biden administration, a lot of these people were really left out when it comes to funding that they needed. After the hurricane in North Carolina, is President Trump and the current administration, are they? Can you tell a difference in resources and things that are
Yes,
available for
yes,
victims?
absolutely, absolutely. So Hurricane Helene, we came into North Carolina on day 6 or 7, worked with folks for a week. They'd never seen anybody from the federal government until the second last day. FEMA came in and made things way worse, way worse. The guys we were working with, it was not good. Versus here, federal response was within hours. Okay, going from not seeing anyone from the federal government for 2 weeks to within hours. I mean, the coast look. This is not by the coast, man. This is Central Texas, South Central Texas, and you had the Coast Guard in there. What they save, 161 people or 144 people. That one Coast Guard unit, just hero stuff. This kid's first deployment. Um, the response has been timely. It's been on board. It's been great. It's night and day difference. And
Yeah,
like I said, to me, the biggest vibe change was I didn't. It didn't feel. And it's my limited perspective, but it felt like there was more. There was more from the federal government to work with people instead of just taking over. So that's just my personal, in my
yeah.
30-foot level.
And I'm glad President Trump and Melania, they do make the time to go into these zones once
I
it's,
never saw Joe Biden in North Carolina. Or,
yeah.
yep.
Yeah, you won't see that kind of stuff. So I definitely know we got the people's president in back in office to back us. And I'm just praying for all these people and these families who lost people and that we can heal from this in time. Chris, it's just hard in these times to not let your mind wander. I know it's maybe different because you're like literally boots on the ground, so you just really want to focus on the immediate need. But for other people that are in the country watching these situations happen, I mean, we just had the LA fires and the calamity that was, and how it almost seems as if certain things are,
The arson fires.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I lived in California for years. I mean, from intelligence perspective, like when you would, there's only like 4 ways into LA for the freeways, and when
mm,
the fires break out and they just conveniently shut down all those freeway, and I mean, this
it's
is
just. Yeah, it's just hard to not let your conspiracy mind wander
no,
because we like literally in the last 4, 5, 6 years, like how many events in our nation have we seen to this scale and magnitude? And then the way that they are handled, it's like, man, come on. Like I'm praying, honestly, I'm praying for revelation. Like I'm praying that over the next 5 to 10 years that we can actually figure out, are these situations, are they man-made and man-derived?
So let me address that. You will. And you said something conspiracy. What's the difference between conspiracy theories and mainstream news?
Well, they're becoming, our conspiracy theories
About
are
six
becoming
months.
facts.
About
Yeah.
6 months, man.
Yeah, you
Now
let them wait
changes.
out there. Yeah.
So I highly advise you and your audience, if you haven't already read it, Boone Cutler and Mike Flynn, General Flynn, wrote a great book called Citizens Handbook to Fifth Generation Warfare. Now, I look at the world through a different perspective because the guys I've been blessed to work with over the last 20 years. But if you understand what fifth generation warfare is, the tactics used to take a country down from the inside, then things start making sense to you. Okay. You're looking at infiltration, not invasion. You're looking at, when you have a porous border where you lose more people to fentanyl deaths than we've lost in Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq combined. This is fifth generation war. This is going after America's soft underbelly. And this is all over the place. When you see vaccines coming in and you get an administration that mandates, the military takes vaccines, and what happens? Your hardest chargers, your most out of the box thinking folks get court martialed or drummed out of the military. Those that stay in, now you've got vaccine injured. The fact that it's reduced before Trump reduced our ability to respond to a foreign threat by 37%. That's not by accident. Okay. When you have Joe Biden, Tom Homan and I did a movie called River of, what was Death County and the River of Broken Dreams. Sorry, senior
Yeah.
movie. And we played that. We went and took that to Congress. In that movie, you had three-letter agents from Central America laying out how Joe Biden in 2015 led the charge for the biggest campaign to get unaccompanied children in the United States of America. He's on the front page of their biggest paper saying, we'll give refugios to menores, we'll give refuge to your children. The result of that was 500,000 unaccompanied children. Think about that. 500,000 children with no parents came across that border into the United States of America. Add that to the fact that with DNA biometric testing, and what you have is the United States federal government under the Biden administration becoming the largest, most successful business partner in child trafficking that the cartels ever could have asked for. That's just a fact. All right. And that's part of fifth generation warfare as well. And when you
Yeah.
understand this stuff and you take a look at what's going on, then you don't feel so crazy because people know something's wrong. They get it in their gut. But understand, Matt, knowledge is power. And we're living in the greatest information war that this country has ever seen. And every intelligence operation will put out 1, 2, sometimes 3 false stories, distractions to go after. So people don't know what's up and going down.
Right.
And if you understand, are you familiar with fear-based programming, MK Ultra stuff like that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So how that you can partition a human brain and create
Yes.
personalities for different jobs. That's what's been done to the United States of America. We have
Mhm.
had fear-based trauma pushed upon us using the media, using government, using corporations, to the point at which people don't even know if they're a man or a woman.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do you know right from wrong when it's that bad? That's
Yeah.
the reality we're living, because when you have a population that's that fragmented, that's that weak, then they're much easier to take over. They're much easier to control. Look at what happened with with COVID back in 2020, 2021. That was a beta test for how compliant people are. How many
Mhm.
people wore face diapers? Well, a lot. After the
Mhm.
first 2 weeks it was probably 80, 88%. Then it
Mhm.
dropped down to maybe 70. But look at that. People were sure in California. When I left California, you pull up to a stop sign, there's someone next to you with their windows rolled up, not one, but 2 masks on, a face shield, and gloves. And they're looking at me, giving me the finger because they're sure I'm trying to kill them because I'm not wearing a mask.
Right.
That kind of
Right.
insanity is just, but that's how you unhinge a population. Is somebody like that going to hit the beaches of Normandy and fight for their country?
Mm-mm. Not at
Exactly.
all.
Exactly.
This has been multi-generational erosion of the fabric of our country through fear-based situations, and and traumatizing us, 9/11, assassinating President Kennedy, multiple events, multi-generation, and it's led up to this point. I totally agree. I saw a speech that Lyndon B. Johnson gave to some university just after President Kennedy passed away, and he was actually gloating about weather weaponry. Like whoever can control the weather can win wars. And he was saying this in the late 60s. And so
Well,
I'm thinking, these people, man, they are using our own tax dollars on weaponry and now against our own people, whether it be storms or fires or bioweapons or mRNA shots. It's like they're pulling out all the stops, and those who have the eyes to see are paying attention to all this, and it's heartbreaking because majority of the population still can't figure this out,
no,
and
they
it's
don't have
sad.
yet.
They don't have it yet, but I pray that they will.
That's what
Um,
we need to pray. We need to pray for the
mm,
scales to be lifted off people's eyes.
mm,
You are 100% right, Matt. I mean, and that when I was at Rev 17, that was the message I left to the California audience. You're in California, you're fighting. This is the tip of the spear. When California coughs, the rest of the country gets a cold. The work you're doing in California is so important.
Hey man, we appreciate it. I love all the love and support that you brought with your team and Pastor Dave Scarlett. Please give him a big old hug next time you see him
Well,
in person. And I can't wait to get back with you, Chris, and to fellowship with you and break some bread and have a meal together. I really appreciate you making some time on your Saturday with construction zone going on to jump on to the Ultra MK podcast and help everybody reverse this narrative. So we'd love to see you soon, buddy, and we'll be praying for you out there.
all right, God bless, guys. See you.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
That is our obligation, to inform and alert the American people, to make certain that they possess all the facts that they need and understand them as well, the perils, the prospects, the purposes of our program, and the choices that we face.